Well, we all know, despite its gorgeous weather and abundant resources, California is bleeding residents. More than 500,000 leaving between April 2020 and July 2022 alone. Now, as shocking as it may seem, high taxes, high crime, and reparations payments aren't huge draws. In fact, the Democrat supermajority in the state legislature is so desperate to keep people from leaving the state that they're threatening them with an exit tax if they do. Now, shockingly, left-wing Governor Gavin Newsom opposes this cash grab, but we figured out why. Because Governor Hairgel has bigger aspirations.
We know we have a big battle coming, which is why we'll help lead the fight to make sure we elect leaders in 2024 who believe in democracy. Our country is facing an existential battle for who we are and who we're willing to become. It's not an exaggeration. That's the truth. What's happening in those red states? It's not who we are. It's un-American. It's undemocratic.
Right, Gav. And your closing of churches and schools and various businesses for more than a year was just what our founders would have done. It was so pluralistic of you, chasing those people off the beaches. Well, his big national tour announcement late last month made no reference to fixing the economy or the border or standing up to China. Nope, because he has no answers there. So it's all about stoking hate and division by revving up the culture wars.
We're going on the road to take the fight to states where freedom is most under attack, where Republican leaders ban books, criminalize doctors, fire teachers, intimidate librarians, kidnap migrants, target trans kids, stoke racism.
Now, an obvious dry run for a different campaign theme. Well, Newsom's red state tour is just the latest sign that President Biden may either not run at all or he may have serious competition. Now, check out Biden's numbers in the newest CNN poll. Even CNN couldn't spin him.
Just a third of the Americans polled in this survey, 32% to be exact, say yes. 67%, nearly two-thirds of Americans, does not believe that he deserves re-election. There was a bit of an upward trajectory after the November midterms. That little uptick has seemed to stalled out.
Now, it stalled out. In his campaign-style tour, Newsom generally avoided hitting the areas where Biden is literally and figuratively stumbling.
He performs worse on individual issues than his overall approval rating. Only 45% say he's honest and trustworthy. Only 35% say he inspires confidence. 32% says he has the stamina and sharpness for the job.
These are absolutely disastrous numbers, which is why Newsom basically shadowed Biden's trip to Selma last month by going to Montgomery, where the Bloody Sunday March ended. Because when we think of Gavin Newsom, the son of privilege and the founder of Plump Jack Winery, we think moral crusader.
I'm here in Montgomery, Alabama, just a reminder not only the moral courage of leaders like Dr. King and Rosa Parks, but all the hard work that was done after those moments. So much of the rollback of the progress that we've all enjoyed, that we have a lot of work to do to build a movement to counter what's happening in red states across this country.
What's this thing he keeps doing? That's very strange. But he's hoping for a Newsom movement to knock off President stumbles. And he's trying to demonize the red states. And to do it, of course, he's not going to run on, lowering your gas prices. Instead, if he runs, he'll take the unimaginative path of running against Trump.
The problem in our country right now? Authoritarian leaders who are so hell-bent on gaining power and keeping it by whatever means necessary that they're directly attacking our freedoms in state after state. That's why I'm launching the Campaign for Democracy.
Lame. Now, we had more people vote in the last election than ever before, and record turnout in the midterms as well. So this is a totally weak argument about democracy. In fact, if anyone's threatening democracy, it's the people who want to pack the Supreme Court. But his argument is not as weak as the performances in Florida. He's got me and you, sister. In his hands, he's got the whole world. He's totally offbeat. Is it just me, or is he unable to clap on beat? I don't know. By the way, if he's the Democrat nominee, how does he take on the man who won re-election by 20 points? Well, Newsom spoke to students at Florida's New College, where DeSantis has begun to restore the proper balance to public higher education. His message was that DeSantis launched a war on the college and was hurting students, threatening their education. He told them, I want you to know you're not alone. You matter. We care. Oh, inspiring. Now, sure, this is a lot of hot air, and I don't think he's going to get very far in Florida with that message. Its booming economy and pro-business environment is a magnet for Americans. Why would voters in Florida, or anywhere else for that matter, want to take advice from the same people who are destroying California? Now, let's be candid. Almost no place on earth has the advantages of Gavin Newsom's California in terms of beauty, climate, natural resources. There's a reason it's long been known as the Golden State. If Gavin Newsom's policies don't lead to a healthy economy in California, and they don't, how could they possibly work anywhere else? But Republicans should do more than laugh Newsom off. They shouldn't run away from a debate with him. Instead, they should embrace it. Republicans have to remember that the Reagan Library is not the only institution in California. There are almost 40 million of our fellow Americans living there, including over 6 million people who voted for President Trump in 2020. We can't abandon them. Every Republican seeking national office should make a point of going to California and making clear to them that we want to help. Joining me now, Harmeet Dhillon, CEO of the Center for American Liberty and attorney extraordinaire. Harmeet, Gavin Newsom on his tour, I mean, it is pretty hilarious. He's presided over the utter decline of California. He's ushering in more decline, and yet he thinks he has the answer for what ails America. Your thoughts?
Well, Laura, I think if I'm a presidential candidate on the Republican side running against Gavin Newsom, what I would be focusing on a daily basis is showing B-roll from California cities and from the Central Valley, and showing how making California into a sanctuary state for every ill in this country, drug abuse, illegal immigration, transgender mutilation of children, has really destroyed the quality of life in our city. I mean, this is a city where a millionaire was murdered on the streets just a couple of days ago, and where cops are retiring early because the prosecutors don't prosecute crimes. And so he should be running from California. I don't hear him talking about California a lot on his tour around the country because it isn't a pretty story.
Getting people to the polls in California is not going to be done with the transgender message. It's not going to be done on the Dobbs case. It's just not. It's going to be done on giving people their dreams back and giving America a chance against China, a real fighting chance against China. Maybe the border a little bit, but it's the economy, stupid. I keep saying this, and I keep hearing people get pulled off for the latest shiny object.
You're absolutely right, Laura. And the vicissitudes of the economy are such that last year, you could sell your house in California and probably make a profit on it if you'd had it for a little bit of time. Right now, the housing prices are in a tailspin, so people who have mortgages are locked into them, and we don't have a lot of mobility at the same time. Companies are laying people off right and left, and jobs are shrinking. So I think we're really heading for a cliff here in California and other blue states, and we have yet to see the worst of it. And I don't know how Gavin Newsom is going to deal with that. I think he's frankly checked out of California at this point.
How would you rate how the RNC is preparing for 2024 so far, and maybe state GOPs with the mail-in ballot harvesting problem we're going to see again in places like Wisconsin and other states? 1 to 10.
What we just saw in Wisconsin shows it's maybe a 2 right now. And so I think that we haven't gotten the message yet that we need to be investing. People on the ground are telling me Democrats had about 500 ballot chasers in Wisconsin. We had a tiny fraction of that, maybe less than 10% of that. So it's not serious. We really need to change our attitude.
That's the key. You got to win elections, right? Harmeet, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.